Hi, I'm Troy.
And I'm Vicki.
And we are Empty Nesters Wine. Welcome back to Empty Nesters Podcast, episode 14. Last week we were talking about our lives together. Meet the nesters, meet the empty nesters.
Well, our young lives, anyway.
Our young lives, yeah. Back when we were nesters, not empty nesters. I think I left off with we were moving to Lecomton from Topeka. We lived in Topeka, and I worked in Lawrence, and I worked with a guy that lived in Lecomton. Oh, gosh. It was 1995? Mm-hmm. 1995. I'd never heard of Lecomton.
Nope.
And, this guy says,
lived here all my life, and I'd never even heard of Lecomton.
So, yeah, this guy says, hey, there's a trailer park in Lecomton, and there's this trailer just a few doors down from me that's a really nice one, and it's vacant. And we came up and looked at it and decided to move in to Lecomton, 1995. And it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Yep.
Yeah, so we moved here in 95, and then our daughter was born in 1996. So
Yep.
We had a son born in Topeka and a daughter born in Lecomton.
Wow. We lived in Lecomton.
Well, yeah. We'll get to that story in a few minutes. But yeah, after we moved to Lecomton, I joined the fire department. I was a volunteer firefighter for 10 years, and it was very interesting. A lot of training and a lot of calls that we went out on. It was really cool. Through a series of job changes and promotions, I was in a position where I couldn't really respond to calls for the fire department, so I turned in my gear and resigned from that. Although I still know all the firefighters, and I'm now on the fire board. So it's a great group of people, and I certainly left on good terms. I just got so busy with my job that I couldn't do it. But
yeah, you even helped them start their first chili feed, which
That's
is
right.
an annual event.
Annual chili feed.
This year it's going to be a drive-through.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You just leaked information no one has.
Whoops.
They're considering something like that. But don't tell them you heard it here. So, yeah. So Vicki was very pregnant, and man, let me think back. That was another middle of the night one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, woke me up in the middle of the night.
Nope, I didn't wake you up.
No?
Mm-mm. No, you were working really early mornings at that time.
Ah.
And I waited until you woke up.
Great. So.
Well, I'd already had one false labor.
Right.
That we drove all the way to Kansas City for. And I'm like, and Troy was working some horrible hours. I mean, he was getting up at like 2 o'clock in the morning to go to work. And
yeah, I was working like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. to 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
Yeah. And so, like every night I was having Braxton Hicks and, all those wonderful things. So I had a false labor. And we drove all the way to Kansas City. He's like, I don't want to do this false labor
Hold on a
business.
minute. What'd you say? Every morning I was having what?
No, every night I was having Braxton Hicks.
What's a Braxton Hick? I've never heard of this thing.
When you're pregnant, you have these like contractions at night or a certain time of the day where it feels like you're having contractions, but it's like your body getting ready to start having real contractions.
So,
but there's a difference.
Okay. Braxton Hicks.
Yeah.
Learn something new. All right, continue.
So I didn't want to wake him up if it was a false alarm again. So I was out in the living room waiting on him to get up. And then
That's
I decided
right.
it was
I kinda remember
definitely
that.
labor, right about the time his alarm was going off. So he comes out trying to find me about the exact same time that an actual contraction hit. And I hit the floor on my knees, and he couldn't find me. He's like, where are you? I hear you. I was on the opposite side of this countertop, and he's like, where are you? So we ended up hopping in the vehicle and headed, we had to drop off Austin. our son at one of the neighbors' houses, and then
Yeah, and my insurance said they would cover the delivery in Lawrence, but they would prefer we went to Overland Park Regional Medical,
which is where my doctor was.
which was like 45 minutes away.
Yeah. So we get in and we make it to what was it, 23rd Street?
In Iowa.
23rd and no, it was 23rd and Castle. And I said, honey, I don't think I'm going to make it to the hospital. And you're like, you're going to make it. So I moved from the front seat to the back seat and lay down. Like, okay. So we get all the way to Lenexa. We were headed to Overland Park and get all the way over there, and I didn't make it to the hospital.
No. And
Nope.
it didn't help that I took a wrong turn.
Yeah.
And I was really hauling it up there too in this old beat up minivan that we had, stick shift minivan.
Yep.
And it died. It overheated, and it died when I took the wrong turn.
Which was on the 435 interchange.
Yeah, so I had to push start it to get it to start. And then I got turned around and heading the right way. And then Vicky says, help me get this baby out of my pant legs. And I'm like, what?
Yep.
She's wearing sweatpants, and it happened there. So
Yep.
So we pulled over. I pulled over and called 911. And I called 911, and I was just like, hey, tell me how to get to the hospital. We're almost there. And they're like, no, pull over. We're sending an ambulance. I was like, okay. And then they told me to stay on the phone and describe the situation to them.
Shoelace.
Yeah, so I described the situation, and she said, okay, I want you to tie off the umbilical cord. And I was like, with what? And she says, do you have a shoelace? And I looked down at my shoes, and I was like, no. And she says, you don't have a shoelace in your shoe? I was like, you want me to pull my shoelace out of my shoe? And she says, yeah. I was like, okay. So I pulled my shoelace out of my shoe and tied off the umbilical cord, and the ambulance arrived. And Vicky lost her favorite jacket.
I did, man. I just had a baby. I'm not dying. I'm not in trauma. They decided they need to put a IV in my arm. Okay, I get that. Instead of asking me to take my brand new jacket off, they cut it right up the arm. I'm like, okay, so when I get to the hospital, what am I going to do to get this jacket off my arm?
But yeah, we made it to the hospital. It was a big, big to-do because it was the baby that was born on the side of the highway.
Yes, and it was the day before Election Day.
Yeah.
And the news wanted something other than the election and politics to cover.
Yeah, newspapers, TV stations, radio stations were all calling us and talking to us. And I mean, it was a big deal. There was a lot of people coming and going, and all I remember is us just standing in the room looking down at my shoes, one no shoelace and one with a shoelace. But yeah, one of the radio stations gave us a limo ride home from the hospital.
Yep.
And
we took a limo ride to go vote.
Yeah.
On the way home.
Yeah, it was voting day when the paper came out, and one quarter of the front page was Bob Dole.
And Bill Clinton.
One quarter of the front page was Bill Clinton, and then the half of the page was a big picture of our daughter on the front page of the Kansas City Star or Lawrence Journal World.
Both.
What was that? Both.
It made it both, and then it made it on like the fifth page of the Topeka.
Yeah, and then the hospital, someplace contacted us about doing a TV commercial about it.
It was the hospital because they wanted to build another hospital in Lawrence. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite an event. I went back to work after a few days, and you know how they do those money trees where they have like this little bear tree and they like tie dollar bills on it. Well, they made one for me. It had dollar bills tied all over it, but then it had shoelaces tied all over it as well. So I got my shoelace back
I
finally.
think I still have a few of those shoelaces tucked
Probably.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were all different sizes and odds and ends.
Good thing we lived in Lecomton then and not Topeka.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we would have went to the Topeka hospital, but
True.
yeah, we never would have made it from Topeka to Overland Park.
No.
But yeah, so if you listened to our podcast last week, middle of the night when our son decided it was time to come, and I got pulled over by a cop on the way to the hospital, got a police escort. So yeah, anytime Vicky has a baby, she's got to make a big event out of it.
Well, I don't make a big event out of much things, so I guess a baby's the perfect thing to do it for.
True. So yeah, so after Alexis was born, I was still working quite a bit. Vicky started a daycare in our home in Lecomton.
Yep.
Did that for 10 years.
Yep. I also homeschooled our kids
Yep.
for several years.
Yeah, homeschooling our kids, they were 1 year apart. Is that right? Or
Well,
was it
they're
2
2
grades?
years. They're 2 years
Grades.
apart, but by the time I finished homeschooling Lexi,
Before you started. I think they were 1 grade apart, 2 grades apart, and Vicky decided it was tough trying to teach 2 different grade levels. So she gave Lexi 2 years in one to try to catch her up to get to where Austin was to make it easier.
well, that was part of it, I guess, but mostly because we'd started her and then we continued on to the next. Because when you're homeschooling, you don't have to stop for a summer break if you don't want to. And so we'd kind of kept going at our own pace, and then we decided we were going to put them in a private school. Well, then she had to finish the grade. So that's why she got ahead.
So yeah, she was a young high schooler. We sent them to the public school in high school. They went to Perry Lecomton and graduated from there. Yeah, our time in Lecomton. What, Vicky? You worked for the school for a while in the cafeteria.
Yep, I did 1 year as a lunch lady.
Lunch lady, just like her grandma.
Oh yeah, my grandma was the best lunch lady. But yeah, I did my time at Lecomton, or I was actually at the high school and worked there. And I think the kids all seemed to like me. Usually they'd come up to me on the street, "Oh, you're our favorite lunch lady." But I don't know. They never got away with anything when I was there. They just, they'd say something in line they weren't supposed to, and I'm like, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that." And they'd be like, "Oh, sorry." And then they got to the point where I didn't even have to say anything. They'd realize they were standing in front of me, and they'd say something like, they'd just apologize and stop doing it.
So yeah, so we've been living in Lecomton for 24 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, 24 years. It's been a good time. Met a lot of good friends, a lot of people here. Vicky started 3 businesses here. We talked about your daycare. No, 2. Well, working on the 3rd one.
Yeah, we're working on the 3rd one.
Yeah, Vicky's cleaning business, Squeaky Clean, home and commercial cleaning.
Yep, been at
Keeping
that
her
for 10
busy.
years.
Yeah, that keeps her very busy. And now we're starting a winery, so hopefully soon. And, we expect to spend a lot more years here in Lecomton, making a lot more memories.
Yep.
So that is the podcast for today. Vicky, did I ask what kind of wine we're
You
tasting?
didn't.
Oh, man.
Well, we've tried this one before. This was our lemon wine that we made a while back. I actually got actually tried a lemon wine at another winery that I fell in love with. And I'm like, I want to replicate that. But I think it turned out really well. Now that it's finally aged enough.
Yeah, it's a real pretty golden color.
Still smells a little soapy.
Yeah, a little
but
weird.
it doesn't taste soapy at all.
Yeah, when you smell it, you get a smell like you might not like it, but when you taste it, the flavor comes in real nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay. Well, hey, I was talking about meeting some good friends in Lecomton. We have several, and we've met a lot of good people here. There's a couple that we met here in Lecomton that we enjoy spending time with and traveling with. And we recently took a trip to Herman, Missouri with them, and I think we're going to talk about that in next week's podcast. So join us next week.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.